So today we're going to do some spot grouting here to touch up a tub from the 1970s. So it's about 50 years old. Hard to say if this is actually the original tiling. If it is, which I believe it is because I've seen other houses in the area with the same kind of yellow tile. People probably didn't use this to shower in. There's another shower in the house. But you can see here when I zoom in, some of the grout has come off in a few areas. But if you look here, most of the areas are very clean and solid. So I'm not going to touch those. I'm going to go into these and scrape a little bit more out just so I get enough surface to get it in there. So you can see there's two spots here and here. There's another spot that's a little iffy here. And then over here, there's another spot. Now, if I come down to the floor, it's probably hard to see, but you can see right here, this whole line has come up. And what really happened is the grout is still there. But what happened is, because this is close to the shower, water came over the edge probably, and eventually maybe it got in through back here, but it swelled up the wood and pushed this tile up. Kind of see like that. So there's not much you can do there other than tearing out all the tiling, and it's not that big of a deal. What we're going to do is just go ahead and put a nice thick grout line there as well. Okay, so today I'm going to be using sanded grout. Usually in showers with really tight, less than 1/8, you use unsanded. But since I need this for the floor and the shower, and it's such a small area, this is not going to be a problem. A sanded grout is usually referred to as a stronger grout, and it's also a little more durable, but you do have to be careful because it could technically scratch. If you have very delicate, very high gloss surfaces, it could scratch that surface. But in this case, we're not going to worry about that. We have a very, very small amount to do, and we don't need to mix a lot of grout. So this is not a pre-mix. We're going to go ahead and follow the directions and mix it up and then apply it. So before I do my grout job, I'm just going to do a quick cleanup. You can use any tool. I'm using kind of this putty spreader, and I'm just kind of getting it in there. I'm not pushing too hard, but I do want to make sure that I get any of the loose stuff out. If you leave stuff in there, you won't get the meat or the thickness you need for the grout to properly adhere to things. So once I do that in all my sections, I usually use a little brush like this. I come in there and just clean out any of the particles. That way I know it's a pretty clean surface. I'm going to do that for all the items. So I'm going to be using your standard grout float. It's kind of like a hard plastic, but not super hard like metal, so you can kind of flexes when you try to get it into the gaps. For a job this big, you could probably use another instrument like maybe a spatula. But basically, pretty standard grouting. There's our spot. We're going to hold the float at about a 45, press in. Then I'm going to press it vertically or parallel to the surface just so I can really get it into that gap. Then I'm going to after I do that, I'm going to come back and do an up and down and a left and right. I'll come back and do the same thing to this one. So you can see how it kind of filled in and it's overflowing. I'm going to come back and push it in. Go again. Basically until you know it's in there. After this, we're going to come back with a sponge and kind of wipe off all the excess. If you don't do that, it'll stay cloudy and then you're going to have kind of bigger problems. You might have to get like muric acid or something to get it off. Not recommended. So another thing, don't grout if the tile's still wet. You got to make sure it's basically bone dry. And really get it in there, push it hard. The only issue you may have is there's going to be, you know, a little bit of discoloration between the old grout and the new grout. But there are grout cleaners you can use that are really good, and they'll turn it right back to white. They sell those at like Lowe's and Home Depot. I've used them before and they're very impressive. The last two things you want to do is clean your tools before it all dries. And then the next thing is wring your sponge out really good so there's no more residue on it. And come back and don't hit the grout. Just hit the tiling to get any of that hazing off. Because let me tell you a quick story. My first tile job I did when I was about 20 years old, I did not do this. Came back the next day, the whole thing was pretty hazy, and I thought, yeah, I'll just wipe it off. That didn't work. Could not wipe it off. I had to use like this muric acid to get it off. So when I'm doing this, I'm not touching the grout. I'm just touching the tiles. See how that is right before the grout? I don't want to get the grout wet. I don't want to disturb it. So I'm just doing a light brushing just to get that hazing off. Especially on a tile like this where it's so shiny, you can see how shiny it is. That hazing will really shine through and you don't want a problem with that. Then once you're done with this, let it dry, and don't let anyone take a shower for at least 24 hours. Really, the thickness of this is so narrow, it's going to dry pretty quick. So any more than 24 hours and you should be good.